From Shinran's Koso Wasan, number 95. My eyes, being hindered by blind passions, cannot perceive the light that grasps me, yet great compassion without tiring illumines me always. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandos, 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 namandos. Greetings, and thank you for joining us for this morning's Sangha service. I keep hearing that these are unprecedented times. Everyone is saying it. The news anchors, the politicians, and even our spiritual leaders are calling these unprecedented times. Unprecedented means never done or known before. So given that this is what unprecedented means, isn't every moment of every hour of every day of our life unprecedented? Isn't that a fundamental teaching of Buddhism? The Reverend Tai Tietso Uno once wrote, "Our task in life is to discover that which is extraordinary in the most ordinary, mundane things. The object of our spiritual quest may be right here before us if we only have eyes to see it." So how do we cope with the all too human, oftentimes fragile and deeply challenging experiences brought on by COVID-19? How do we accept with grace and kindness and compassion the unfolding circumstances that we presently find ourselves in? How do we process our grief, whether it's over the loss of physically gathering together each week in the temple to hear and share the Dharma, or grief over the loss of the physical connection we were so used to experiencing within our circle of family and friends? Or maybe it's a searing grief over losing someone to this relentless disease and the added pain of not being able to physically be with them, to hold their hand. Maybe it's the grief of seeing the myriad forms of suffering that this disease has brought, like the passing of so many loved ones, the crushing weight of responsibility on all of our medical folks and the first responders and the essential workers that have been and continue to be directly impacted by COVID-19, or the suffering of those facing immediate hardship and trauma, like food insecurity and income insecurity, and all the racial and socioeconomic inequities intersecting. These are very real and painful losses that we cannot pretend do not exist, and nor should we. Yet how do we cope emotionally, psychologically, spiritually with all of the very real external challenges and difficulties affecting us? How do we walk this unfamiliar and often unsettling path with compassion, both for ourselves and for others, just as our teachings invite us to do? For me, I keep coming back to that word unprecedented. And I have to ask myself, can this pandemic, at the very least, provide the opportunity to appreciate our humanity? I'm reading a wonderfully powerful book right now. It's a fiction novel called The Overstory by Richard Powers. And there's a line in the book where a father has brought home a big box and his young son is beyond excited. And in describing the son, the line says, "He's a 7-year-old who knows that most of the world is a present to him." In our youth, we do think everything is for us or should be for us because everything revolves around us. But as we grow up, we hopefully transition from everything needs to be about me, everything and everyone needs to meet my wants, to everything has truly been given to me. I woke up this morning. That's the gift of life. I'm alive. I can breathe. And then I made a wonderfully strong, delicious cup of coffee. The labor it took to plant, to grow, to harvest, to package, to ship what ultimately became my morning cup of coffee is breathtaking. when we stop to see it. And then I took this vastly interdependent cup of coffee into a corner of my living room where my home altar is set up. And I received the gift of a really practical yet remarkable 2,600-year-old teaching. And on top of my altar sits a myogo, the 6th character Nembutsu, which says Namo Amida Butsu, which means I take refuge in boundless compassion, supporting and sustaining me always, which itself is an 800-year gift from Shinran. My eyes being hindered by the blind passions of greed, anger, and delusion cannot perceive the all-penetrating light that grasps me, yet great compassion, without doubt, without tiring, illumines me always. Namo Amida Butsu. The object of our spiritual quest may be right here before us, if only we have eyes to see it. The teachings have always been about awareness. The word Buddha translates as the awakened one. It's an awareness of, an awakening to, the universal truth of our profound interdependence and our very precious impermanence. Yet pre-COVID-19, did I walk in this truth? Did I consistently live this truth? And I'm not talking about intellectualizing this truth, but rather, did my actions, did my speech, did my thoughts manifest our profound interdependence and precious impermanence? I am doing my part to stay home, sheltering in place, as my city and state have mandated. But also I stay home because of our interdependence and the responsibility that comes with our interdependence. I don't want to be the cause or catalyst for someone to receive this disease. I had to go into the store last week to buy some food and postal stamps, and everywhere I looked, I saw people in masks or with wearing coverings over their face. And I was wearing a face covering as well. At one time, I might have thought to myself, seeing someone wearing a mask pre-COVID-19, I might have unkindly thought, are you sick? Why are you out in public if you have to wear a mask? But a week ago, my thought at seeing all these people wearing their masks was, thank you. Thank you for wearing your mask. Thank you for easing my anxiousness around venturing out of my safe shelter. The object of our spiritual quest may be right here before us, if only we have the eyes to see it. The Buddhist path is about being authentic, open, and compassionate. It's about bringing wisdom and compassion into our life, and there are so many ways and beautiful practices to live the teachings. In our Shin tradition, becoming one with boundless wisdom and compassion, the heart of the Buddha is the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo, I entrust myself, I accept Amida Butsu, the Bodhisattva's primal vow of boundless compassion. The Nembutsu is not conditioned on a crisis, but on every moment of our life. We don't need a pandemic to experience the infinite light unfolding in each of us. It's been said that things will not be the same after COVID-19. When shelter in place is incrementally lifted, we won't be shaking hands, and we'll continue to wear our face masks, and we'll continue to observe the practice of physical distancing in public for some time. Nothing will be the same. But nothing was the same before COVID-19. Did we notice that? Nothing was ever the same. Seasons were changing, and depending on where one lives, those changes were either blatant or subtle or somewhere in between. Were you noticing? And birth and death were happening. Were you really noticing? Nothing was ever the same. From the moment we took our very first breath, nothing has been the same. In our teaching, we call this impermanence. The wonderful Dharma teacher Thich Nhat Hanh says that it is not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not. So when we can't control what's happening around us, take a breath and then challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what's happening. That's where we can discover our humanity. That's where we can awaken to our Buddha nature of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity. Can you see it? In these unprecedented times that are without beginning and without end, may we appreciate the immeasurable wisdom and compassion abounding every moment of every hour of every day. Do we have a fresh perspective to awaken to it? This current moment in our life is fraught with unknowns, with fear, with anxiety, with grief. For some, it's a collective grief of loss and unwanted changes. And for others, it's a very personal grief of loss and mourning. I hope we were able to step into this moment to share the sufferings, to share the gratitude, to share the joys, keeping our heart open and our minds receptive in accordance with life's realities. I'd like to share a prayer that we regularly recite together during every Metta gathering. It's called the Metta Karuna prayer, and it's adapted from Shantideva's 8th century, The Way of the Bodhisattva. And a shortened version can be found on page 18 in our Purple Service book, which has been posted on our BCSF Facebook page. So there are two types of prayer, petitionary prayer and aspirational prayer. And I would maintain that we have aspirational prayer on the path of the Bodhisattva. The Metta, loving kindness, Karuna, compassion prayer. In trusting in great compassion, may the foolishness of self be shed, transforming me into a conduit of loving kindness. May I be a medicine for the sick and weary, nursing their afflictions until they are healed. May I become food and drink during time of famine. May I protect the helpless and the poor. May I be a bed for those who need rest. May I be a lamp for those who need the light of Buddha Dharma. May all find happiness through my actions and let no one suffer because of me, whether they love or hate me, whether they hurt or wrong me. May all experience true and trusting and boundless compassion and realize the pure land of bliss. Namandos, 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 namandos. The historical Buddhist Siddhartha Gautama very wisely observed that whatever has the nature of arising has the nature of ceasing. And this has been shown to be true whether it's on a micro level or a macro level. We know that shelter in place will come to an end. We just don't know exactly when. So in the meantime, let us continue to take care of each other. Reach out and stay socially connected while practicing physical distancing. Be safe and stay healthy. Thank you for joining in today's service. Namandos, 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 namandos.